This lesson is about irregular verbs in present tense and in preterite tense. The irregular verbs do not follow the rules of regular verbs. That means that the beginning of the word changes. Not only the ending, because we learned that in the regular verbs, only the ending or the endings change. But when you're talking about irregular verbs, the whole word change. The verbs that we see on the screen: to be, to go, to start, to have. As always, we see that the verbs either end in the letters AR or they end in the letters ER or they end in the letters IR. So this is what we see on the screen. Nobody's doing the action. These verbs are in the infinitive form. Nobody is doing the action, and we don't know if the action is happening now or it already happened. So when we conjugate these verbs, like I am, we are, she goes, they go, they start, you all have, the spelling of the whole word changes, not only the endings change. Is, are, was, or were, and are. So if I am saying the computer is slow, the word is comes from the verb to be, and to be in Spanish is spelled with the letters S-E-R. But when you are using that verb in this sentence, it doesn't look at all like the letters S-E-R. You have the letters E-S. So that's why this is an irregular verb. When you are saying the computers are slow, the word for are doesn't look at all as the verb to be. If I'm using the word was, the American computer was my favorite. The word was doesn't look at all like the verb to be in Spanish, S-E-R. Was has a letter F. Where is the F coming from? That's what makes this verb, an irregular verb. She and I were friends in 2002. Again, the word for were doesn't look at all like the verb to be, S-E-R. In Spanish, es, son, fue, somos. La computadora es lenta. Las computadoras son lentas. La computadora americana fue mi favorita. Ella y yo fuimos amigos en 2002. Ella y yo somos vecinos. Another regular verb is to start. Notice the spelling of to start or to begin. You have a Z, and at the beginning of the word you have E-M-P-E-Z. But when you are saying I started or I began, the Z is no longer there. Now the letter that shows up is C. So that's what makes this verb irregular. And then when you want to say I start or I begin, after the P there is an I. But there was not a letter I in the root verb. In the root verb you have P and then E, But when you say I start or I begin, there's an I letter. That's what makes this verb irregular. In Spanish, empecé a caminar en 1976. Empiezo la semana estudiando en la escuela. The verb to have is spelled T-E-N-E-R. But when you are saying I have, there's a letter G. There's not a letter G in the root verb, but there's a letter G when I say I have. When I say you have, there's an I after the T, and the root verb doesn't have an I after the T. When you say you had, there's a U and a V, and that's what makes this verb irregular. Same thing when you say they had, or you all had, there's a U and a V. So all these changes at the beginning of the word, it's what make the verb tener an irregular verb. No tengo mucho dinero. ¿Tienes mucho tiempo en las tardes? ¿Tuviste mucho dinero antes de casarte? Los estudiantes tuvieron un examen ayer.